meeting of the Roosevelt Island Committee of Community Board 8. Thank you for coming. My name is Larry Parness. I'm co-chair of the committee, and with me are my fellow committee members, Ellen Holiday and Judy Buck and Judy Birdie, who are public members of the committee. So it's a nice small group. This could be real informal. If anybody hasn't signed in, sometime before you leave, we have a sign-up sheet, just for the record. And we're going to get a presentation tonight from Cornell New York City Tech on the residential building. We'll make the presentation, and then people will hear from the public can ask questions, and we'll have the board members, committee members ask questions, and the committee will decide whether to make a recommendation or not. The full board will be considering the project on the 14th of May at its land use committee meeting, which will be held at 6:30 at the New York City Blood Center, which is on 67th Street. And then after the committee the full board makes a recommendation, Cornell will be going to the Public Design Commission, which is a city agency which has to approve the designs of any development on city property. And since the Cornell site remains city property, even though Cornell has a long-term lease, they are subject to review. So I will ask Jane Swanson to give a little introduction. We're going to have a slide presentation, and we'll go ahead. Have you turned off the air conditioner so people can hear?
It's on. Yeah.
Everybody can hear.
Yes,
If people in the back want to move forward,
it was really great.
Okay, Jane.
Good evening. I'm Jane Swanson. I'm Assistant Director of Government and Community Relations for Cornell Tech. Some of you know our Director of Capital Projects, Andrew Winters. He unfortunately had a family emergency and couldn't be with us tonight. It's serious but not too serious, and we're glad to know about that. But nevertheless, he can't be with us tonight. And as Larry said, this is not unfamiliar to many of you. We have appeared before you a number of times, most recently with the buildings that now are going to be considered by the Public Design Commission. Tonight, we are specifically focusing on the residential building. Again, these are part of our buildings. For those of you who don't know, Cornell Tech is building an engineering and applied sciences school on Roosevelt Island. The first phase will be completed in 2017, and the residential building is part of that. Tonight, we have Blake Middleton and Ryan Labello from Handout Architects, and they will make the presentation. And then, as Larry said, we'll have questions following this presentation. So, without further ado,
We're good. Any other
Roll.
Roll.
Do we need to turn the light?
Great. You guys hear me? Okay. Back there? Great. So I will move a little bit quickly through the first part of this, which is just a reminder of where the residential tower that's being planned now for the campus is located. I'm sure you're all fairly familiar with what's happening in this quadrant of the island. We're going to talk a little bit about just the location and the program, the actual use that's going on in the residential tower for the campus, and then we'll talk about the design ideas that led to the forming, shaping, and appearance of the tower, and certainly invite your thoughts and feedback on all of that. So the location, based on the master plan, the location of the residential building is kind of interesting because it's at the far corner, the far northeast corner of the campus right here. It's this rectangle that you see right there. It's set behind the central utility plant, which is a relatively low one-story structure. It's nearby the future Executive Education Center, which we're not focusing on tonight. You'll see one or two images of a general form for that. And it's, at the opposite corner of the main, what they've been called the main gateway plaza, which enters into the northwest corner of the campus next. You all know this island better than I do, but it's also part of the sort of the loop of the local bus line wrapping around. And so that's interesting too, because there is a bus stop being planned for this as one of the entry points into the tech walk into the center of the campus, and the main plaza space that looks back out in all directions, really, both over Manhattan as well as the Queens. Next. There were several simple, big ideas in terms of how the building is going to relate to the campus. The master plan had already been established, I believe reviewed by your committees and the community. What's interesting for us is this location that is sort of corner related, which is it's a much different situation than, let's say, the corporate co-location building, which is at one edge of the campus, the FAB, the First Academic Building, which is on the western side. And here we're actually holding down a corner of one of the taller buildings for the campus. There are three primary concerns in thinking about all the students that will be living here, and I'll come back to that in a second. One was the relationship of the building and its entrance to the center of the campus. This is really part of the sort of center of life with all the different activities that are going on inside these buildings and coming out of these buildings, also a kind of central meeting place. So focus between the building entrance and the entry court. The second was the relationship of the tower, and in particular the lobby spaces, and how they open back out to both Tech Walk and to the East Loop Road, and what's been called now the outdoor classroom, and the relationship between that open space here at the south edge of the campus and the lobby spaces. And the third was also the kind of views of those same amenity spaces, how they open back out to the river and to Queens beyond. Next. The basic parameters of the project, it's about 270,000 square feet total. It's 26 stories tall. It's 285 feet to the top of the roof, which is way up here. And that's a good 25 or 30 feet below what's allowable. So we're actually at a lower height than what the zoning permits there. It's about 356 units of different types, ranging from fairly small studios to relatively compact 3-bedroom student apartments. There are about 10,000 square feet per floor, and the people that are using this building almost exclusively, I think, is graduate students, PhDs, postdoctorate students, all the students that are that will be living on campus will be in this building, and so it's really dedicated to both students as well as faculty and faculty and/or students that may have small or younger families too. So there's a component for family living in the building too. Next. There were really 6 principles guiding both the master plan and the development of how the campus concept was developed, and each of these are reflected in how we developed the design of the building. That had to do both with the kind of sense of the river-to-river experience that we get in such a pronounced way here on Roosevelt Island. The relationship indoors to outdoors, and how the life of the inside of the building can also begin to sort of open up and communicate itself back out to the street and to the community. Optimizing performance, this is a very interesting thing which we'll touch further on because it's a big driver for our design concept of the building. That has to do with sustainable design principles and what we're looking at in terms of making this a fairly high performance building. The various kinds of activities that happen in the building. This is a little diagram just showing, again, those lower amenity levels and how they tie back out to the tech walk and to the street. Reinforcing that kind of pedestrian spine, which is part of the main part of the campus plan. Those sort of irregular pathways that are constantly reinforcing that sense of the ridge that runs right down through the center of the island. That was a big driver for the campus planners at the time, and so we also want to find elements in the building that somehow would acknowledge that idea, and then certainly the whole notion of sustainable design and green elements in the building that are paramount to both Cornell and Hudson development for the main programmatic driver and goal for the building beyond housing students. Next. One of the sort of initial inspirations for us was really thinking about building of this verticality right near and on a river's edge, and so we're inspired by 2 things really, thinking about river and waterfront buildings and sort of tower elements. We knew this was going to be a tall building right from the beginning. We understood that there's a kind of a wide side and a narrow side, and we're very interested in the sort of presence of the narrow side and its relationship to the river and to the other campus buildings. And just thinking about this is kind of a conceptual sketch from Manhattan looking towards Roosevelt Island in this case, and what the relationship of this sort of tower-like building might be to the lower scale academic buildings. And then Cornell's campus in Ithaca was also another inspiration. I have to confess, I'm an alumnus of the school, so this stuff was embedded in my gene pool as a designer. But more importantly, I think the relationship of this tower to the river on both sides was a really kind of main driver of thinking about the form and shaping of the building next. So speaking of shaping, so the master plan as we received it when we first started doing the project with Hudson and Cornell was essentially a kind of a rectangular footprint. You may recall from some of the reviews that you've done in the past that this was this was the location in this corner, and it was essentially identified as a box that could be up to 320 feet tall, I believe, and a footprint of about 10 to 11,000 square feet in that location. And so our first desire was to begin to think about how to break down the scale of that box a little bit. We knew that it had to be about the breadth that it is and the height that it needed to be, but were there other ways to begin to form and shape the building, sort of give it more nuance, give it a little more scale, and respond to a bunch of things going on around the site. So the first was to think about how to shape the building and how to relate to the other two, really three other buildings that had already been designed. I think some of these have all been through your review board. And so we're coming in sort of the third player in, so we're already responding to other architecture that's being planned and eventually be built preceding our project next. So we're thinking about how to shape the vertical surfaces of the building to begin to inflect it, to give it sort of a series of additional corners almost that would help reduce the optical effect of the width of the building next. Also at the end grain, at the two shorter ends, and thinking about those relationships, this is a kind of diagram from the east looking towards the west. There's the Colo building. There's some interesting urban design elements going on in the Colo facades, these series of planes and these sort of large, relatively low-scale volumes. They're give or take about 80 or 90 feet tall, I believe, but and how the edge surfaces of the east face of the building might work in coordination with those planes. And that's one of the things that was very important to us, to begin to make connections to these other buildings that are already planned for the site next. I was talking earlier about sustainable design and energy use and high performance characteristics, and this was really the big idea for this project. The goal of the design team is really to see if we can set a new standard for energy performance in a high-rise residential building. And this is going about it in a way that has not been done before, and so we felt very strongly that there was a way to also begin to express that idea of the building. And so I was thinking of it almost as if it made a big thermal wrap, took a big, a blanket and wrapped it around the building and contained both the heat and the cooler air during the summer and heat in the winter in that thermal wrap, sort of walking around in your own sort of sleeping bag suit. And so thinking about how we can achieve that high level of performance, which essentially would be done in a passive way. So it's not with active energy systems, but it's with a relatively thick insulated wall around the whole building and high performance windows. And so that became a driver of our design concept next. And so now we have this building, it has a kind of particular form to it, and we begin to want to open it up and begin to make other relationships of that form to the campus. And so one is to begin to sort of create a primary reveal on the entry side of the building next. And that led towards breaking the wrap and kind of opening it up and revealing part of the inside of the building, and in particular using that vertical edge as a way to give sort of visual focus to the entrance, which is right here at the base here, just next to Tech Walk there. Next. And at the same time, to think about the profile to the sky. The thing that we don't always really like to do is just flat top buildings, and it felt to us very important for a campus like this, and also because some of the other low-scale buildings tended, that have already gone through this process, these beautiful solar arrays that are on top of like these little parasols on top of the building. And we wanted something that would act as a strong counterpoint to that. At the same time, we're also inspired by the geometry and characteristics of the Ed Koch Bridge, and those two ideas began to percolate in our minds. So next, we take it and kind of shear it apart, so there ends up being a higher part and a lower part, and we get the strong sort of diagonal profile at the top of the building, which allows a terrace to occur up here, and at the same time give a stronger characteristic to the building, the top of the tower. Next. At the same time, it's this concentration on making sure that the pedestrian realm is being respected, and there's a strong connection between inside and outside that we were talking about before, one of the principles of the campus design master plan. And in that regard, the lobby is seen here, and the thought is to lift the wrap up, sort of like pulling your pants up and showing a little bit of your stockings or socks, and this sort of elegant, highly visible window wall underneath there to be able to allow the spaces that are inside there, the lobby and some of the lounges for the students, to look back out over what we call the porch right here, which is this terrace that is just a couple of feet above the tech walk and looks back out over what we call the front yard, but they also call the teaching garden out there on the east side of the campus. And so there becomes this very strong link between outdoor active and passive uses here, and then the porch here, and then how it opens into some of the lobby and lounge spaces on the inside for the students. So there's a very sort of dynamic relationship going on between inside and outside. Next.